Achike Chude joins us now. He's a public affairs analyst and to focus on this matter. Morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Chamberlain.
Well, lots of reactions, but we have seen some of those ones we just played on tape now. But from your perspective, from what you heard, what do you even think? So far, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, it was, very clear that the matters had gotten out of hand and that the government was being held primarily responsible for the fact that they have continued to do whatever they wanted to do and to strike at will, causing a lot of casualties in the process. And getting to a level where, for instance, in Bayelsa State, we lost 13 policemen. On Batse, took the lives of about 100 policemen, and then all the other military personnel that died in the theaters of conflict and so on. Because you would also notice a shift in the operations of the Boko Haram. It would appear that military targets, military installations and military personnel have become more or less the new target, and they seem to have moved away from essentially civilian targets, which was what they used to do before, soft targets. Now they are moving after the harder targets and so on. That tells you again that they have grown in strength and confidence and in their operational ability for them now to take on the military, security forces in the country. And so the president found himself, was in a serious dilemma. Because if you cannot assure the protection of your security personnel, how would you be assured that they, when the time comes, they could also rise to the occasion to protect you? And again, I think that even within the higher hierarchy of the security forces, the tendency for some kind of mutiny or rebellion, among the rank and file was always there. You understand? So I think all kinds of pressure were now brought on the president. Again, then the perception of the president himself as somebody that is weak was something that the president had to do everything possible to dispel. And that also brought about the issue. And then again, the international community, for quite some time now, have become much more vociferous, in condemning the Boko Haram insurgency, and also indirectly much more strident in their criticism of the way this matter is being handled by the federal government. So all of these factors, multiplied and made it imperative for the president to do something. But I think the state of emergency, he had no choice. He had to, because something just had to be done. But the major thing is that a lot of people, and I am one of those, believe that it is not far-reaching enough, because we would have expected, when you impose a state of emergency, regardless of the legal arguments as to the propriety or otherwise of the imposition of a state of emergency, one would have expected that it should have been far-reaching enough.
How?
That is, remove the political institutions in place, the governor, the State House of Assembly, and so, because when you have a state of emergency, some of the things, rule of law, to some extent is abridged. That is what happens, because it's an emergency situation in order to take care of the bigger picture of this threat of instability against the Nigerian state. And that could also have a way of, for those who have been saying that some of these governors and so on, and political stakeholders in the north are complacent in tackling the menace of Boko Haram, that would have sent a very clear signal to some of the other governors to sit up or face the possibility of also losing their offices.
Well, I think this point you just raised is very key here. But if you look at it, there's something that we haven't been able to understand. Yesterday we tried to look at it, which has to do with the two-way approach now, the stick and the carrot, all at the same time. The amnesty on one hand and the emergency rule in these states. Which are we going to achieve at the end of the day? How do they come to embrace amnesty with the presence of the forces in some of these places?
Well, the policy of dialogue and the policy of military engagement, I think they are in opposition to one another. Because, what you are trying to say really is, what you are telling the Boko Haram elements and what they are also telling the government is that, yes, okay, we are going to talk, we are going to explore avenues to dialogue and so on with a view to resolving this. But meanwhile, when I have the opportunity to kill you and destroy you, I will do that. And I'm currently doing it. You can see I'm already doing it.
That's what the terrorists have been doing.
That is what the terrorists would seem to be saying. Even the federal government You understand? We are talking and so on, but as long as I'm in a position to deal with you people and to kill you and kill your members and so on and so forth, I'm going to do it. So at this level, you need fence building measures. That is what happens. You need, for even the issue of entering into this dialogue in the first place, and then you have conflict on the other side, without, taking steps to ensure a kind of, cessation of hostilities. That is what usually happens. That is what heralds or brings about, negotiation. That there is some level of understanding that, look, let us shift our swords and let us explore the dialogue, option, and then see how we can move it, to the next level. This is not happening. There is still a lot of animosity. There is still a lot of, conflict that is leading to death on both sides going on, and then you are talking. It doesn't make sense. That is not how negotiations are entered into, really.
But in the first place, even before the negotiation, those who proffered that option, I mean, there was this question that, do they actually know who these elements are? Because after they proffered that option, saying, look, dialogue with these chaps, and then you heard so many comments saying, no, we're not interested in this, and then the killings were still going on. That raised a lot of fundamental questions.
It does. I mean, and that gives you, for those who are skeptical or pessimistic about the issue of this dialogue, whether it will eventually, turn out fine, there is a basis for their skepticism. Because you have, a situation where, yes, they say they know these people. Again, government pronouncements in the past have not helped matters. When top shots, within the government are saying, yes, they are in our cabinet, they are in government, they are in the party, and the rest.
Infiltrating doesn't mean there's a face to it.
Exactly.
Two different things.
Exactly, and that is where you also have the issue of intelligence, actionable intelligence. And so you need to know exactly who these people are. But the fact that the federal government has set up a committee, and this committee is said to be talking to members of the Boko Haram, sect, gives you an indication that there are some people in government or outside of government that actually know these people. But again, the government is now faced with a dilemma. If they go after these people again, they are breaching, there's a breach of faith, of confidence, the agreement, the pact they have to discuss or dialogue with these people. But again, it flies against the statements that the president himself made during his broadcast to the nation. The president uses words like, we will hunt you, we will deal with you, we are going to, and then uses words like insurgents, terrorists, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, the people you're hunting are known to those people whom you have appointed into the committee. So how are you going to hunt them down? How are you going to punish them? You understand? Because you're already aware. So that tells you that it's just a political statement from the president. Because you're hunting them, and they are sitting down with your people, and they are discussing with your people. No, it just doesn't make sense.
I'm not sure that exactly is the case, because how is it that that's where, from what that statement said, the speech, I mean, they're hoisting other flags, moving into areas, and they're still faceless, because don't forget, if you have full soldiers, it's not the full soldiers that come from
exactly, and that is where you also consider the limitation of even this emergency rule and the deployment of soldiers, tanks and so on and so forth, helicopter gunships and the rest. Yes, it will have some effect in the sense that, it will give a sense of stability. But do not forget again that we are not dealing with a conventional army. And a lot of people lose the essence of even this struggle that is going on in the north. You're not, if it were a conventional army, you can be very sure that the Nigerian armed forces is in a better position to decimate them in record time. But you're dealing with people who will strike and in a cowardly manner disappear. They don't sit down, they don't have, headquarters. And even when it appears that they have occupied a particular, a territory, when the army moves in there, they move in from there to another place. So when the government is going into these other states, the army is not going there to actually, they're just going there to occupy and to make sure that there is no infiltration into the territories that they're already, occupying. But these people are not going to wait for you. So what they are going to do, they are aware that the army is coming, and they are aware that the army is coming with superior, firepower. So what they will just do is to quietly leave, this area and perhaps move to other parts of the north where they will continue their mayhem.
Are we taking for granted that the army's plans is just that they will let the people know they are coming in or they're moving? Because don't forget, if we give them the benefit of the doubt, they would have had their plans a long time before this declaration.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why, you see, apart from the state of emergency, there must be a multi-pronged approach. The issue of intelligence, the issue of embedding agents into the Boko Haram, hierarchy, wherever. I think that might be a little bit late because it's a process sometimes that takes years. If you look at, so for instance, one of the terrorist, action, that was aborted, I think somewhere in the United States or so. It took a long time, about 4 or 5 years, of their own agents working with the terrorist organization and so on, until it got to a level when they felt, yes, it is time to move against these people. Unfortunately, they don't have this luxury anymore. But there must be other ways of ferreting out this information. You need to go after the leadership of the Boko Haram. You need to go after and destroy the logistic ability of the Boko Haram. You need to go after the funding of the Boko Haram and those who are responsible for this funding, and then those people that are also responsible for political patronage, that are giving them all the support and information that are found even within the government and outside of the government. You also need to go after them. Because it's not just about having actionable intelligence. After all, we were told at a particular point in time by the SSS, when Mohammed Yusuf, the spiritual founder or the leader of Boko Haram, was killed. And they were being taken to task, the state security services, about, Yusuf's activities and so on. They said, of course, it was in the media, that they had submitted series of reports to the government, but each time the man was picked up, he was allowed to go. So political will is also very, very important.
I think another important issue here has to do with the people, because you just talked about guerrilla warfare, and you also talked about your concern on collateral damage.
Yeah.
If the people are aware of this, knowing full well that definitely a whole lot of them will be caught in this kind of crossfire unnecessarily, should any need for it come, shouldn't they be speaking with some of these people, volunteering information, letting them know what exactly is happening in their locality, speaking up and telling those in authority what they know about any movement of such people?
I think it is key. It is key to also demystifying the Boko Haram. But again, there's also the issue of what happens to this information when we give it to you, and what happens to us. Are we sure that this information we give you is going to be safe? And then again, it's not just beyond that. Not too long ago, I met somebody that somewhere I think in Benin. He comes from Borno State. So when he told me where he was from, I now became interested, and I was asking him questions about this Boko Haram and so on. Clearly, he was not a sympathizer to Boko Haram, but he also said that that the military activities of the JTF in the north has led to the killing and to the death of a lot of innocent people, and as a result, it has a way of radicalizing and changing the perception of even those people who have come in as liberators. You understand? And making them antagonistic, against these liberators. You understand? Now, bringing about a situation where they even refuse to give this information. And that is why it's important that as much as possible, this collateral damage that usually results from this kind of, intervention is limited in such a way that you do not alienate the people and build resentment in the minds of the people, because ultimately you need the people. And that was a challenge that the United States, Army had in Iraq. At a particular point in time, they now started working on the minds and hearts of the Iraqi people to see whether they could change them away from their, feeling of animosity and hostility towards them, to do things, that would ingratiate them or the people to them, and so that they realize that they need all the help they can from the people.
Isn't that where we may see possibly an advantage in the non-removal of the political leadership? They could bridge that gap.
Well, there's the possibility, but how far have they been able to bridge this gap all this while before now? Do not also forget that, unfortunately, the politicians in this country have also been responsible for some of the crises of leadership, of governance that we're having in this country. For a very long time, for the past maybe 8 years or so, we were all told about how politicians were fraternizing with the wrong set of people, with the wrong kinds of people, how they were dealing with the thugs and the militants and so on and so forth, because they wanted some positives from, electoral campaigns as a result of their interaction with them and so on for a very long time. Of course, the issue of Boko Haram is also a throwback